On Network Africa. Amnesty International says scores of civilians were massacred in the Tigray conflict in Ethiopia. French troops kill a top Al-Qaeda operative in Mali. Plus, an Egyptian man sets himself ablaze while protesting against corruption and poor living conditions in the country. Thank you for joining us on the program this hour. I'm Layo Adegoke. Rights group Amnesty International says scores and probably hundreds of civilians have been massacred in the growing conflict in Tigray in northern Ethiopia. Witnesses blame forces loyal to the Tigray People's Liberation Front for Monday's killings, but Tigrayan officials have denied that TPLF troops were involved. Fighting between government forces and the TPLF broke out last week. However, yet an information is had with phone lines and the internet down in that country. There has been long-standing tension between Ethiopia's government and the TPLF, which controls Tigray, the country's northernmost state, and it has boiled over into military clashes, including airstrikes by federal forces. In the meantime, Ethiopia's federal government has appointed an interim administrator for Tigray state. A brief statement issued by Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed said Dr. Mulu Nega has been appointed chief executive of the state, and he is expected to recruit and appoint heads to lead executive organs of the regional state. Earlier, MPs had passed a resolution to establish an interim administration that will be accountable to the federal government in Tigray state. Now, elsewhere in the capital, Addis Ababa, the Ethiopian government launched the civilian blood donation drive, where hundreds of volunteers waving flags gathered up at a stadium to donate blood for injured armed forces members.
The conflict is with pro-junta group, not with the Tigrayan people. There are so many Tigrayan people in Addis, our brothers, our sisters. This action of the army will liberate the Tigrayan people too.
Now, French Armed Forces Minister Florence Parly says their forces have killed Ba Ag Musa, a senior official of Al-Qaeda's North Africa wing. He is said to be one of the main assistants of Iyad Ag Ghali, the leader of one of Mali's Islamist group. In a statement, she congratulates the soldiers for this success, lauding their commitment, courage and selflessness. France has 5,000 troops in Mali and neighboring countries in West Africa's Sahel, helping to counter insurgency. To politics now, a top high-ranking official of South Africa's governing African National Congress has appeared in court today on corruption charges. The Secretary General of the governing ANC party, Ace Magashule, has denied involvement in a multi-million-dollar procurement scandal over a government housing contract. Now, earlier today, there were scuffles outside the courthouse in Bloemfontein as his supporters angrily declared he was the victim of a political witch hunt. Prosecutors who have already charged more junior officials and businessmen in the same case insist that they have evidence that Mr. Magashule was involved. However, he's been released on bail. President Cyril Ramaphosa has promised to fight against the corruption that flourished under his predecessor, Jacob Zuma. Well, let's get more on this story now from our South Africa Bureau Chief, Betty Dibia, joining us from Johannesburg. Hello, Betty. Please tell us more about this corruption case involving Ace Magashule.
Well, it has to do, first, to put the picture, Mr. S. Mahashule, who is currently the Secretary General of the ruling African National Congress, was the premier of the Free State province for 10 years. Now, this particular case, among others, has to do with an provincial asbestos audit contract in 2014, while he was still the premier, to the tune of 255 million rand. Taking that to Naira, we're talking about 7 billion Naira. And he's alleged to have received about 10 million rand in gratification. And as a public officer, he's in contravention of what they call the PRECA Act 2004. That's the Prevention of and Combating of Corrupt Activities Act of 2004, in terms of the fact that he received gratification and he looked away, or there was some negligence in his oversight. He looked away while his cronies, pilfered the money that was meant to identify and remove asbestos roofing from homes in the province. So that's what the case is about. 2014. There are other cases. There is the Frida Farm. It's a farm project to empower black farmers, but that's not what's in focus at this point. This has to do with that asbestos contract, that a lot of money was stolen, and 7 other people have appeared in connection with this case last week, and the case has been postponed to February 2021, just like his as well has been adjourned to February 2021 as well, and he's been granted a bail to the tune of 200,000 rand.
All right, I was just going to ask, how long is this legal battle likely to take? But you've just said it's been adjourned till 2021. So what punishment will he likely face if he's found guilty on this matter?
If he's found guilty, or anybody for that matter who is found guilty according to the act, it depends on the court. You have the magistrates court, the regional court, and probably the high court. It depends, but it varies from fines, sometimes about 5 times the amount of money that you may have stolen. In his case, he's facing 21 charges, or 21 counts, acts of fraud and corruption, and alternatively theft and money laundering. So it depends. Fine, a sentence, maybe not exceeding 18 years, in some cases not exceeding 5 years. It depends on the enormity of what has been taken, or where you're found wanting. Or fine or sentence or both. It just depends on, but the trial, by the time the trial will happen, we'll find out how it's going to end.
Indeed, we'll be knowing more next year. But let's talk about the reactions from the citizens. What are South Africans saying about this? Are they convinced that justice will be served?
Well, he's a big fish. We've seen enough oohs and ahs, but he's not the first big fish to be arrested or to have handed himself in for the court process, to look into. But people want to see, as some of the whistleblowers, they lose everything when they become whistleblowers. So many of them are saying, look, till we see people in orange overalls, that's the prison uniform in the country. And I'm not saying Mr. Mahashule is guilty at this point, but any of the people found wanting regarding all these allegations of corruption, till we start seeing people in jail. Because some cases have been, in this particular one, 2014, this is 2020, that's 6 years, and other cases that are just lingering. And the whistleblowers lose their livelihoods, they lose the trust of people who may employ them, among other things. So people want to see people go to jail for all the misdemeanors that, if they're found guilty, that's just the bottom line. But for the cameras, we've seen a lot of, if you've seen some of the footage of this particular case, we've seen people holding vigil, protests, scuffles at the court, and all that. But people want to see cases get to an end and people actually convicted and see the walls of the jail. That's what will probably convince the people.
Well, all right then. Thank you so much, Betty Dibia, our South Africa Bureau Chief. Thank you so much for speaking to us. Have a great weekend.
Thank you very much. You too.
Moving on, Ugandan George Julia Sebutinde is among the 5 new members elected by the UN General Assembly and Security Council to the International Court of Justice, ICJ, the principal judicial organ of the United Nations. After 2 days of voting, General Assembly President Volkan Bozkır announced the results after receiving a letter from the President of the Security Council. The ICJ is composed of 15 judges and settles legal disputes between states, in addition to providing UN entities with advisory opinions on legal matters. Judges are chosen on the basis of their qualifications, not their nationality, but no 2 judges can be from the same country.
As a result of the voting which has taken place independently in the General Assembly and the Security Council, the following 5 candidates have obtained an absolute majority in both bodies: Iwasawa Juji, Japan; Georg Nolte, Germany; Yulia Sabatunde, Uganda; Peter Tomka, Slovakia; and Han Kin-shu, China. They are therefore duly elected members of the International Court of Justice to serve for a 9-year term commencing 6th of February 2021.
Over in Egypt, an Egyptian man has been rescued by police and passers-by in Tahrir Square after setting himself ablaze in the capital, Cairo. Local media reports that he's protesting against corruption and poor living conditions following his dismissal from his job at a bank for exposing corruption involving state officials. In a Facebook live stream, the man said his life had been ruined and he was unable to earn a living. He then doused himself with an inflammable liquid and told security officers in the square not to come near him. However, he was wrestled to the ground by security officers who put out the fire. Let's speak now to the VOA's correspondent in Cairo, Edward Yeranian. Hello, Edward. Good to see you. Thank you for speaking to us on the program. What's the latest on this man who set himself ablaze in Tahrir Square?
Well, Layo, there is conflicting information, but what the prominent information we're seeing, the most widespread, is that he had minor injuries. His name is Mohammed Hosni, according to social media, and he allegedly worked for the state auditing organization, but this is there is contradictory information there. So I can't say that for sure. And the most interesting piece of information, if you can corroborate it, I can't corroborate it, but it looks realistic. It looks like the man in the video setting himself on fire. He's talking to, on Twitter, a man who is identified as a Muslim Brotherhood leader outside the country. And he's saying that he's going to create a surprise in Tahrir Square without quite saying what that surprise is. And he calls himself the Egyptian Mohamed Bouazizi, who is the Tunisian man who set himself on fire in 2011 when the Arab Spring began, which allegedly set off the Arab Spring. So one assumes that he's going to set himself on fire if he calls himself the Egyptian Mohamed Bouazizi. But the speculation on the social media channels, at least from government supporters here in Egypt, is that he's a Muslim Brotherhood supporter and he's doing this at the behest of the Muslim Brotherhood. Now, I can't corroborate that, but looking at the video, it certainly seems to be a very plausible scenario.
All right, then. Thank you so much, Edward Yeranian, the VOA's correspondent in Cairo. Thank you for those updates.
My pleasure.
Still ahead on Network Africa. Our Africa Tech segment takes a look at a mobile application that's fighting misinformation in the society. Please stay with us. Thanks for staying with us. Doctors Without Borders says a shipwreck off the Libyan coast has killed 20 people just hours after news of a separate incident in which at least 74 migrants died. MSF says teams in the northwestern city of Soman assisted 3 women as the lone survivors of another shipwreck where 20 people drowned. On Thursday, the UN's International Organization for Migration, IOM, reported a devastating shipwreck which claimed the lives of at least 74 migrants off the coast of Homs, that's a port city 120 kilometers east of the Libyan capital, Tripoli. It said that 47 survivors had been brought back to the shore and 31 bodies retrieved, adding that the boat was reported to be carrying more than 120 people. To agricultural matters, less than 2% of climate finance goes to small-scale farmers in developing countries. Now, that's according to a new report released by the UN's International Fund for Agriculture Development and Climate Policy Initiative.
The report by the UN's International Fund for Agricultural Development and Climate Policy Initiative says that just 1.7% of funds available to help tackle and adapt to climate change went to small-scale farmers in developing countries, despite them being disproportionately vulnerable to climate change. Higher temperatures and increased incidences of drought and flooding destroy crops and livestock and make it difficult for the farmers working on the world's estimated 500 million small farms to continue to feed their communities and earn a living. As these farmers produce 50% of the world's food calories, if they cannot keep producing food, global hunger will inevitably rise.
Honestly, this change in weather really scares me. The sun is scorching and clouds pass by quickly.
In examining the climate finance gap for small-scale agriculture report found that climate change financing surpassed $500 billion for the first time in 2017 and 2018. But only $10 billion of this was earmarked for smallholder farmers. IFAD is calling for more climate investment to be directed at this vulnerable group, which will not just benefit the farmers, but the global community as a whole.
Climate finance directed at small-scale farmers results in the continued production of nutritious, affordable food for wider communities. This means that these are investments that help eradicate hunger, which are investments in global peace, well-being, and stability.
IFAD's Adaptation for Smallholder Agriculture Program is the largest global climate adaptation program for smallholder farmers, which has already channeled more than $300 million to more than 5 million farmers in 41 countries.
Welcome to our Africa Tech segment. Social media platforms have fast become conduits of information disorder, making it difficult for the audience to detect what is true and false. Now, even though some believe there is no practical way to fully curb the spread of misinformation on the internet, there are some tactics that could help, like Otito, which means truth in Yoruba. The app is developed by software entrepreneur Timi Olotu and his team to fight fake news through crowdsourced facts.
Social media comprises of public platforms that allow anyone post any information online without accountability, but these social platforms are conduits of information disorder. To curtail the fast spread of false information on the internet, a software entrepreneur in the UK, Timi Olotu, and his team have developed an application called Otito that helps individuals research and write fact-based articles with other people on the internet. The web-based application is designed to fight misinformation through crowdsourced facts and community moderation. Timi, who is also a journalist, felt the need to help people identify what's true and what's false on the internet.
It just seemed that we were in an informational crisis. No one was sure what to believe anymore. And as a result, it was very easy for people to spread misinformation. And I just felt something needed to be done that was less about getting people to think a certain way, but more about equipping them to be able to identify what is false and what is accurate.
Otito organizes articles as evidence-based claims and allows multiple people contribute different claims to the same topic. According to Timmy, the app forces users to back up every claim they make in an article to a source and allows anyone reading it to validate the claims.
So what I wanted to do was design a system where people are disincentivized from contributing misinformation. They're incentivized to contribute factual information. And it's very easy for anyone looking at information on Otito to identify what is more reliable and what is less reliable. And that's what led to the whole idea of breaking down articles into claims or statements of fact.
The problem of misinformation is so widespread, and for the Otito team, that brought a lot of skepticism from the audience.
I think that problem really faded away the more we developed the app and the further down the road we went with it, because as people started to see the app take shape, as they were able to interact with an actual live system on the internet, they started to get ideas themselves. They started saying, this is useful, but it would be even more useful if you could add this, or if you could do that, or if you could change this part of it. And that gave us the momentum and the information we needed to refine the app.
Otito is a media format and crowdsourcing app that empowers users to fight misinformation and fake news while accessing reliable content on important topics.
And that's what we at Channels TV are all about, facts and not fake news. That's it on the program for today and for the week. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Layo Adegoke. Have a lovely weekend.